So it's Christmas time once again, and horror doesn't stop. At the most, what they say, the most joyful time of the year, horror is still here, it's still around. And there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of Christmas horror movies. But a lot of them are really shit. Like a lot of things in the genre, there is a lot of really, really bad movies. And there's a lot of really bad movies that are set around Christmas. A lot of them all cashing in and hoping that they're going to be that next Christmas classic that the horror community absolutely loves to watch around this time of year. But they're not all great. So I thought I would go through some of the ones that I watch every year that are just horror. Of course, I get right into the Christmas spirit by watching all the absolute classic Christmas movies. But this, I'm going to be specifically talking about the horror ones that I watch every year without fail. That, funnily enough, still get me in the Christmas spirit. Now, the movies that I'm going to be talking about, a lot of them are ones that are going to be obvious. They're on the list for a reason and so on. And there's not loads of them, but I just wanted to go into a little bit as to why I like them. But also, if you haven't seen them, it gives you a bit of an insight as to what they are as well. But I'm sure you've probably seen these. And when I talk about films that most people have seen, I'm actually going to start off talking about one of the lesser known Christmas horrors that not everybody has seen. If you're part of the horror community, you probably have seen this, but outside of it, it's one of those movies that not everybody knows about, and that is Christmas Evil. Christmas Evil is a really, really interesting movie because it's actually quite sad. Well, when I finished watching it, I actually felt quite sad. Basically, you're on a journey with this guy who has a traumatic past after he witnesses something that really sort of basically messed him up. And you're on this journey where he's sort of essentially taken the piss out of, he's a bit weird and so on in his job. But then he decides to take matters into his own hands, as you expect, because he puts on a Santa costume. He actually then thinks he's Santa and then goes on a massive killing spree. But I think it's just the fact that it's one of those movies where you sort of feel for the main character because of the trauma that he's been through, but then it all becomes about him doing these horrible things and what's right, what's wrong. But it's actually a very well-made film. It's a very well-performed movie. The main central performance is absolutely fantastic. But it is actually a movie that I watched a few years ago now, like later on in life. Obviously, a few years ago, I came across it, watched it, and it has since then been one of those movies that I always put on at Christmas. But I wouldn't necessarily say out of this list, it's one of those movies that, and there are a couple obviously on this list as well, they're not the ones that you put on to have fun for Christmas. It's just one of those movies that is a very well put together movies that so happens to be about Christmas, and obviously Christmas and Santa being a central part of the movie. It doesn't feel like it's just a movie that's made for the sake of making a Christmas horror. It actually feels like it organically is that. And so, yeah, I really like Christmas Evil. I know that it has built up a bit of more of a cult status now, which is great for this movie because it does deserve it. But Christmas Evil, if you've seen it, you know what I mean. If you haven't seen it, and you like horror, and you like sometimes maybe, a little bit confused as to whose side you should sort of be on, then you should like Christmas Evil. So next up is Jack Frost. No, I'm not talking about the Michael Keaton movie, although the way that snowman Michael Keaton hybrid thing looks is pretty horrific. But no, this is Jack Frost, the movie that he's definitely got his foot in, movies that are so bad they're good. And that's what Jack Frost is. Jack Frost is one of those movies that if you just want to watch something and just take the piss out of it but have a good time doing it, Jack Frost is one of them. It's just such a fun movie. It doesn't make sense. It's so weird. The script is hilarious. The performances are hilarious. It's just one of those really, really bad movies that ends up being like a time that you truly, really enjoy. So Jack Frost is great. The sequel is pretty much flat out bad, but at the same time, there's still something like some charm that you can't not watch it. So I would say watch the sequel as well. But the first Jack Frost is definitely one that if it's not on any of your list to watch this year, then you definitely should. Jack Frost is pretty hilarious, and I absolutely love it. I don't know what it's on at the moment. I know the sequel's always on stuff. I don't know if the first one is, but if it is and you see it and you haven't seen it before, then go and watch it. Because even now when I'm sitting here thinking about it, there's so many scenes in it that you're like, what the fuck is going on? It's great. I love Jack Frost. So another film that I watch every year, in fact, there's 2 of these out of like 5 movies I think there are. There's more of these movies than you actually think, because most of the time people only really talk about the first and second one, and the second one is pretty much for one reason, but that's Silent Night, Deadly Night. The first one is a really good movie. I think that it is underappreciated in regards to like the performance. It is very cheesy. It is what it is, but once again, it is one of those movies that feels organic, that the fact that it's not just a Christmas movie for the sake of being Christmas. It does work as a Christmas movie, and it's really good. You know, it's a slasher, you know, so it's got what you want in it. It's got messed up kills and blood and all that sort of stuff, but it's just another one that is old school horror slasher fun, and I enjoy it. I really do enjoy it. And as I said, I think the main performance is always underappreciated in that respect, and I know I've spoken about that on podcasts that I've been on before as well, but it's very well made. It's just one of those proper old school horror classics that I don't think you necessarily even have to watch at Christmas time, but it's better obviously if you do. And then obviously the sequel, I mean, the sequel is literally hard. Like, I would say the sequel is 70% showing you what happened in the first movie, like literally showing you what happens in the first movie, and then 30% its own thing. But when it's being its own thing, it's absolutely brilliant. And then obviously we get the absolute classic line of "Garbage Day" that is just unanimous. It's like one of those things that's known. It's one of my most used. It's one of probably everybody in the horror community's most used GIFs or memes or anything like that. Like, that scene on its own is just one that you can just have put on and have it on repeat, like constantly. It is so funny, that scene, and the main performance in it is so bad but so good at the same time. It's a little bit like Jack Frost. Like, the Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 is a little bit like Jack Frost, where it's one of those, it borderlines so bad, it's good. But it's one of those movies that it's a shame that it wasn't more of what, you know, that 30% wasn't the other way around of like where it was 70% the original movie and 30% this movie, its own ideas. It should have been the other way around if they were doing that, because I would have loved to spend more time with this actor being the absolute crazy person that he is. The delivery is so weird and off, and then we would probably have got more incredible scenes like the Garbage Day scene, and then obviously all the other movies that came after that. As I said, I think there's like 5 of them that I don't really remember. But if you're gonna watch any, then obviously watch the first one. Definitely watch the second as well. But watching the second one isn't necessarily, you know, essential. I don't do that every year, but I do find that throughout the year I am just watching that clip from it like so often. But the first movie, Silent Night, Deadly Night, is a really good old school slasher. So the next one is one of the newer movies that I put on the list, and it's a movie that has passed a lot of people by. It's still a movie that I very rarely get see that it's spoken about, and that is Christmas Bloody Christmas. And I absolutely bloody love this movie. That's bad, isn't it? But I really truly love this movie. Ever since it came out, I think it was like 2022 possibly. I should have looked up before, but it's still a recent movie, but I watched this ever since it's come out. There's just something very old school feeling about it. I do think obviously it has its problem. I like the characters that we're on the journey with, but it goes a little bit into that Rob Zombie pretentious territory where they're saying things that they think is real or how real people talk, but it's constant and it's not, and it becomes like a little bit crude. Nowhere near to the level of what Rob Zombie does with his scripts, and that's just like crude beyond a different level. But Christmas Bloody Christmas has a bit of that, but it makes up with it with the fact that it's about a robot Santa going around killing people in absolutely gnarly ways. But the film itself is absolutely gorgeous. It's all shot like 16mm camera. It's such a gorgeous movie that it's one of those movies that when you watch it, you're sort of taken back to the time when movies looked like this. And I can't, like, every time I watch this movie, I'm just in glee of the cinematography of it. But then on top of that, you do get some amazing shots, some amazing scenes. The performances, as I say, they are very good. You get the blood, the guts. It's a bit like Silent Night, Deadly Night, where it feels like an old school slasher. And I really, really enjoy it. Like, if you haven't seen Christmas Bloody Christmas yet, which a lot of people seem to have not seen it, I really, truly do recommend it. You might end up hating it, but I absolutely love it. Like, I genuinely put it up very high on my list of my favourite Christmas horror movies that I actually get very excited about watching. Like, I haven't watched it, as I'm sitting here now, I haven't watched it yet because I'm really excited about getting to the point a little bit closer to Christmas where I can actually put it on and watch it. And I can't speak highly enough about a movie that not enough people have seen. So Black Christmas is a movie that, once again, is sort of surprising at how little this movie has been seen. And I genuinely think that genuinely hurts its sort of iconic or the iconic status that it should have. This film came out in 1974, so before Halloween, like before a lot of these old school slashers, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th. Like, this movie was before all them. And obviously, it didn't continue and get its sequels, which is probably one of the things that tarnished the legacy of it. But then at the same time, we're left with just this sort of one. Obviously, it's been remade very badly multiple times. But this one, all the way back from 1974, is still a movie that I find that not as many people have seen. Once again, within the horror community, it is well known. And once again, a movie that has picked up a bit of a cult status. But Black Christmas, like I said, it actually started, a lot of people see it as the start or one of the start of the whole slasher subgenre of horror. But it's also one of those movies that I wouldn't say that you enjoy, because it's a very unsettling experience. And I think that's obviously a depiction of the time. 70s horror, I think, is more important or influential than what people think, because obviously it is, a lot of the 70s is the foundations of where really horror, for me, truly started to be what it was and continues to be. And I think a lot of the influences in modern horror still stem a lot from 70s horror rather than 80s horror, which obviously came after it and did its own thing and was more about crazy cocaine movies. Whereas the 70s, a lot of it was all, it felt so dark, so sinister, so claustrophobic in how it made you feel. And Black Christmas is one of those movies. I absolutely love Black Christmas. I think it is one of the best horror movies in regards to a depiction of what a horror movie truly is. Very similar to, say, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. For me, there are not many, if not any more, unsettling movies than the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I feel like that about Black Christmas as well. It is a very... When you're watching this, you can't take your eyes off it because you're wondering where it's going to go next. And it's almost a bit of a mystery horror as well, because you're like, who is it? Who is it that's doing these prank calls? And then it starts getting darker and darker, and then obviously people start dying, and you're trying to figure it out as you go. And then you get the gut punch of the ending, which to me, to this day, is one of the not only the best, but the most unsettling endings of all time. I'm not going to say what it is, just in case anybody that does watch this hasn't seen Black Christmas. But for me personally, I remember the first time as a teen when I watched it, and I sat there for like 5-10 minutes or so afterwards, where I was just like, that is the fucking, what, like, because it's so dark, the ending. But once the film finishes, you can't stop thinking about what that means. And I'm not going to say any more than that. But Black Christmas, to me, it needs to have more of a cult status. It needs to have more of an iconic status within horror and outside of horror, because it's a very well-made movie, a very well-acted movie. And it really is a movie that has an impact on you when you see it, but not like the Christmas cheery impact. It's a very dark movie, but it is a movie that, like I said, that when it came out in 1974 was before a lot of everything that came after it. And I think the influence from this movie to other movies is very clear and very strong. And I couldn't recommend Black Christmas anymore because it's absolutely amazing. I truly love Black Christmas. Gremlins is literally one of my favourite movies of all time, and it is one of, if not my most watched movie of all time in my entire life. Gremlins is so good that every time I watch it, I'm in awe, and it still blows my mind that we're watching something now that they made in '84 that still looks incredible. Like, it still blows my mind that they brought to life these gremlins in the way that they did. And they're so, and I mean, they are real and they feel so real, and there's so much character to them throughout the movie. Gremlins is a movie that I put on every single Christmas ever since I was a kid. And not only does it make me feel like Christmas, but I really, truly, even though I've seen it, I mean, I don't even know how many times I've seen Gremlins, but every single time it puts a smile on my face. I get nostalgic, but also still to this day, I sit there and I think to myself, what an insane accomplishment they did with this movie. And as well as that, the film looks gorgeous. It's got great performances. It's fun. The performances in them are all individual people rather than just being the same people all put into the same film, which is obviously what happens so often now. It's not, we used to be in the time in the 70s and the 80s and so on where characters were actually characters. There were individual people in movies. Now everybody sort of feels the same, and they're just talking with each other in the same sort of way, and that nobody feels different. Very often people just feel the same in movies, and back then in 70s and 80s we didn't. And Gremlins was a prime example of that. But not just the people in the movie, the gremlins themselves, they're so different to each other. Every single one looks different, behaves different, and does different things throughout the movie. But also what I love about Gremlins is that it is definitely one of the best gateway horror movies out there. It has these moments in it where it almost goes like full horror without like all the proper blood and guts, and there are some pretty dark moments in it, but then also there's all the lightheartedness that you expect from a Joe Dante movie where Steven Spielberg's name is all over it, but obviously it's made by Joe Dante, and both absolute legends. But what they put on the screen in this movie is just chaos and anarchy, and it's a riot, and it's so much fun, but also it's artistry at its absolutely highest form. So I love Gremlins. It's a movie that I will love for the rest of my life, and I love the fact knowing now that I get to share that with my daughter, and my daughter now gets to sit there and watch Gremlins and absolutely loves it, and also asks now, when are we watching Gremlins, because she loves it that much. And this last one is the newest movie that's on this list, and obviously that is Terrifier 3. We now have a Terrifier movie set at Christmas, which means now every year we can sit down and watch a Terrifier movie at Christmas. It's it blew my mind at how good it was. And as simple as that. I would probably say that it is my favourite out of the Terrifier movies so far, because we know that we're getting more. But there's just something about these movies. And it's not just about Art the Clown, and it's about what he does and the horrible things. For me, obviously, there has to be more to it. And I think for me with Terrifier, it's just this world that Damien Leone is creating, and this story arc that's behind it. I really enjoy that, how he's not just a guy dressed as a clown doing these horrible things. There is more to it, and I'm sure as we go along we'll find out more until we get to the end of what the story is. But for me, once again, it becomes about how this movie inspires me, and how Damien Leone as a director is inspiring me and other independent filmmakers who want to make stuff, and then it's so difficult, but then you see a movie like Terrifier and you're like, what an incredible accomplishment that they've made, and what an incredible success it has been so far, that now Terrifier 3 is the highest grossing unrated horror movie of all time. Like, that's insane, of all time. And that's what Terrifier 3 has done. And I think that goes to not just because of what it is, and people obviously wanting to see the horrible things that happen and what Art the Clown does, but I think a lot of that is down to the fact that they are actually fantastic movies, and they're put together very well. And the cast as well is not shit. They could have just got anyone and that's it, and they could have been running around doing these things. But Sienna, and all the other characters around her, whether it's from Terrifier 2 or Terrifier 3, you want to be on this journey with them, but also you don't know how long their journey is going to last, and it's interesting to see where that goes. So Terrifier 3, I know, is a movie that I'm going to be watching. Probably, I more than likely will watch every Christmas. It is a bit longer, and we know that, and that's a lot of people's gripes about the Terrifier movies, that they are longer, and obviously it's not as long as Terrifier 2. But I really still enjoy my time watching these movies, irrelevant of the runtime of what they are. So it's a gorgeous, gorgeous movie set at Christmas, with Art the Clown dressed up as Santa, doing Art the Clown things in very, very horrible ways, but yet you still enjoy it, and you get that Christmas sort of joy and glee out of it. But you probably shouldn't, but you do, and that's that. I mean, what can you do about it? If you like horror, that's what it is. So Christmas, Terrifier 3 is another movie that I will from now on put on my Christmas list. Obviously, I'm looking forward to getting it on a physical copy, so then very soon, actually, hopefully, so then I can put it on and watch it before we get to the end of Christmas this year. So there we go. That is a list of movies that really sort of pop out to me, are movies that every year I watch that are Christmas horrors. There are probably ones that I've forgotten, but these are the ones that I'm like, okay, these are the ones that I have to watch every single year, because I obviously want to watch other genres for Christmas, like Christmas movies and actual Christmas movies that don't involve blood, guts, ghouls, goblins and all that sort of stuff. But also being a fan of horror, I do obviously want to be watching horror movies as well at Christmas, and a lot of time it ends up being preps for my show or other shows as well. And also, talking of Gremlins, we have an episode coming out this month all about Gremlins anyway, which is our Christmas sort of special episode, or as I said, all about Gremlins. And that's a big one for me because, as I said, Gremlins is one of my favourite movies of all time. So it was a joy to speak about it and get it all on an episode as well. But as I said, if you haven't seen any of these, obviously I can recommend them more. These are the movies that I would recommend that you go and watch. If you have seen them, well, then you know how bloody good they are. And if you don't agree, that's fine. That's up to you. You might think they're absolute shite. But it is what it is. So there we go. That's my Christmas movies that I watch every year. In the comments, feel free to put down movies that aren't on this list that you watch every year that you recommend to me. I may have seen them or may not. There might, you know, obviously like Krampus is something as well, but I don't watch that every year. I sort of watch it every now and again. Krampus is good, but it's not sort of for me to the level of these sort of movies. So maybe don't put Krampus, because I'd go, all right. But yeah, get involved in the comments and make sure that you subscribe, because, you know, every now and again I put out videos like this, but the podcast on video format is always coming out on YouTube as well. So until next time, stay creepy and have an absolutely bloody lovely Christmas.